Avi Melamed is an Israeli author, educator, and independent Middle East strategic intelligence analyst, and he is the founder of Inside the Middle East Institute. He joins us now live to talk more about this war. Thank you so much for taking the time to be here.
Hi, Josh. Thank you for having me.
Of course. So first off, people have been picking up bits and pieces of exactly what is going on here. Can you break down what is happening and how we got to this point?
Well, Josh, since Saturday morning, Israel is engaged in a war that was imposed on Israel. The war was initiated by two major Palestinian Islamic groups that operates in Gaza Strip, Hamas, who rules Gaza Strip since 2007, and the second organization is Islamic Jihad in Palestine. They waged a major insertion attack on Israel on Saturday morning, resulting in the killing of more than 700 Israelis, most of them civilians, kidnapping more than hundreds Israelis, civilians and soldiers, and leaving behind some 2,000 and more people injured. Some of them are in a critical condition.
Looking at these images that are coming out of Gaza City, we do have several of them. There's been a lot of smoke. You can also see the rockets at times that are going through the air, followed by fire. What goes through your mind as you're looking at those images?
Well, Josh, of course, it's a very turbulent, disturbing scenes to see on both sides. Unfortunately, I think it's important to understand how and why we got here. Just trying to make it very shortly to frame the things. In 2005, Israel withdrew from Gaza Strip and handed over control in Gaza Strip to the hands of the Palestinian Authority. However, a year and a half later, Hamas, an Islamic militant organization that vows to eliminate Israel, Hamas was born in Gaza Strip in the 1980s. Hamas conducted a coup inside Gaza Strip, terminating the rule of the Palestinian Authority, and ever since Hamas is ruling Gaza Strip. Hamas and the second largest organization in Gaza Strip, Islamic Jihad in Palestine, vows to eliminate the state of Israel. Hamas is in alliance with the Iranian regime as well as with the Hezbollah, the Lebanese organization, and this is all structure that was composed and nurtured and supported, financed, armed, and so on by the Iranian regime as part of an Iranian master plan to basically eliminate the state of Israel through the use of conventional military force. In the last couple of years, as part of this strategy of the Iranian regime, Hamas and Islamic Jihad has been constantly repeating a military round against Israel, targeting Israeli cities and communities, mostly through the shooting of rockets, missiles, and from time to time attempts to infiltrate to next-by Israeli communities located very close to the Gaza Strip. Last Saturday, Hamas, after a long time of planning, was able to infiltrate to the state of Israel. Hundreds of Hamas militants infiltrated to the Israeli territory and basically started a butchering campaign from one community to another, as I said before, resulting in a massacre of hundreds and hundreds of Israeli civilians and injured.
And you touched on this already, but this attack is being described as a surprise attack. It's being called an unprecedented attack. Is that an accurate depiction of what happened here?
Yes, Josh, definitely. I would say this is an unprecedented attack in both aspects. The planning, the thought that was put beyond this attack. We have good reasons to believe that the Iranians were part of the planning of this attack. One of the major reasons to say that is because simply Hamas and Islamic Jihad leaders formally admitted they have been assisted by the Iranians. It is also unprecedented, of course, in the scale, magnitude, and of course, the terrible, horrifying outcome of that attack in terms of the death toll and damages on the Israeli side. So in many different perspectives, this is totally unprecedented attack.
And we did hear from Israel's Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu pretty quickly after this all unfolded. What do you make of the comments that he made, and what stood out to you, I guess, about what he had to say?
Well, Josh, I think it's important to understand this is a mega event. This is an event that has a regional and strategic ramification. This is a pivotal moment in the story of the Israeli-Palestinian conflict and in the story of the trajectory of this conflict, and beyond that in the regional perspective. And what we are looking right now is actually something that has the potential to generate a very significant strategic shift that could be positive in the service of the state of Israel. What do I mean by that? I mean that if, as it's going apparently to happen, Israel is about to launch a massive war against Hamas in Gaza Strip and against Islamic Jihad, a massive ground operation. Apparently, the end result of that is to eliminate Hamas and Islamic Jihad military capacities. And this is very significant development, because the meaning of that is that once Israel will damage and severely cripple, if not totally eliminate, Hamas and Islamic Jihad military capacities, that means that Israel is taking out of balance the Iranian master plan, of which Hamas and Islamic Jihad are very significant players. Taking out the balance of the Iranian master plan is a good news for the region and for the trajectory of the Israeli-Palestinian conflict, because the Iranian regime has an interest in constantly fueling the flame of the conflict and initiate and generate constant instability. Taking out, if that is going to be the outcome of the Israeli move, taking out Hamas and Islamic Jihad from this equation basically is potentially a positive strategic shift, not only for Israel, but also for Palestinians who are looking for sort of solution and do not support Hamas and Islamic Jihad militant way, and also positive for regional players who need stability.
What sort of implications do you think this has on the relationship between the Saudis and Israel? Because it seemed like things were maybe headed in a diplomatic direction, but now is this kind of throwing that into question? Could this have an effect on that?
Well, Josh, great question. And let me address that question from a different perspective, starting with the question, why did Hamas launch that war? And one of the major reasons Hamas launched that war was because Hamas and the Iranians want to tackle, to intercept the process of the growing Israeli-Saudi dialogue. This is one of the reasons beyond Hamas attack and beyond the Iranian involvement in that. So understanding that and referring to your question, I would say that maybe in a counterproductive in a way, or counterintuitively way, the outcome of this whole war that was initiated by Hamas would be that it could boost and accelerate an Israeli-Saudi dialogue leading to an arrangement between, an understanding between Israel and Saudi Arabia. So this is a great example for one of the potential, as you said, strategic ramifications of what we see right now. And let me reiterate what I say, Josh. This is a mega event, and this is a pivotal moment in both the trajectory of the Israeli-Palestinian conflict and in the context of the region.
We heard from President Biden here in the U.S. over the weekend as well, where he did pledge support to Israel as all of this is ongoing here. What do you think the U.S. involvement in this is going to be?
Josh, great point. Very significant. The U.S. message right in the very early phase of this war was very clear, and it was addressing particularly and directly Iran and the Hezbollah in Lebanon. The American message is very significant and very needed, because one of the major concerns is that we may witness a situation while the Israeli-Hamas war is expanding. It may cause Hezbollah, who is already threatening to do that, to join the war. The American warning to the Iranians and the Hezbollah is definitely something that Iran and Hezbollah have to take into consideration. The fact that American administration, Biden administration, stood immediately, firmly on Israel's side is a great move. It's an important move. It is serving the needs of the region. It is serving the strategic needs of the state of Israel. It is serving the strategic needs of the United States of America in the Middle East.
What are neighboring countries, how are they reacting to this ongoing situation here? Because as we mentioned, we talked about, the U.S. reaction, we've talked about some of the other areas around there, but what are neighboring countries doing as all of this is happening there?
Well, Josh, I have been discussing and talking with different sources in the Arab world. This is part of what I'm doing constantly, and it's a very interesting picture. When you look at the major players in the region, Saudi Arabia, Egypt, Jordan, the Palestinian Authority, I can tell you that in the end of the day, it is very clear in between the lines that each and every one of these players would not shed a tear to see the weakening, if not the defeating, of Hamas and Islamic Jihad. Because as I said before, Josh, let me reiterate, Hamas and Islamic Jihad, being part of the Iranian destabilizing axis, present not only serious threat to the state of Israel. Hamas and Islamic Jihad are presenting a serious threat to the Saudis, to Egypt, to the Palestinian Authority, to Jordan. So from that perspective, you could see that there are regional players that definitely would like to see Hamas significantly weakened because it serves their strategic interest. One other aspect in that regard, we have to look at the whole story in a regional perspective and remember something very significant, and that is in the context of this normalization between Israel and Arab states, particularly when we talk about the context of the Abraham Accord. One of the major power engines beyond all this process is the realization of the Arab states, like United Arab Emirates, like Bahrain, like Saudi Arabia, like Morocco and others, that Israel is enormously strategic, valuable partner. And that is very significant in the context of what is going right now, because right now there are people in the region who obviously oppose the Israeli-Arab rapprochement and normalization. There are people in the region, in the Arab world, who are actually arguing that Israel is weak, that Israel is about to crumble, that Israel is not able to be a valuable partner. That is very significant because in the context of the war that we see right now, Israel is and will project its might in a way that will be beyond any doubt. This is something that I think it's important also to internalize and understand.
Do you see any end to this in sight anytime soon? Is this going to be ongoing for a while?
Well, Josh, it depends what do you mean in end and what's the end goal. Obviously, I would say that we are heading for a couple of very intense, I would say, days, maybe weeks of fight and developments on the ground. It seems like that if, according to the estimation, Israel is heading towards a massive ground operation, the purpose of this ground operation is not to take revenge. The purpose of this massive ground operation is to create a new reality, to create a new reality that will secure stability, that will deprive Iran and its militant proxies, Hamas and Islamic Jihad, to continue and to fuel the flame as they wish. In other words, this is a move that is supposed to generate this strategic shift. We are looking at a long-term, multi-phase process. It is not short process. The process does not end when the fight ends on the ground. It actually starts once the fight ends on the ground. So it's a multi-phase, long-term one, which will call for intervention of different players, regional players and global players, to take part in this new shaping of a new reality in Gaza Strip of stability that will offer hope and future of hope, not only for Israelis, but not less for Palestinians themselves. That is the significance of the pivotal moment that we see right now and its potential ramifications and implications.
All right. Thank you so much for taking the time to join us and provide this perspective, help kind of break it down a little further. Is there anything else that you want to add about all of this before I let you go?
Yes, Josh, I would like to add one more thing, which I think is very significant. One of the things that we look at this issue when we talk about it as a pivotal moment, as I mentioned before, as a mega event, I think there is also a need here for a paradigm shift, not only in the context of the regional or domestic players, but also in the context of the Western players. What I mean by that is to say that unfortunately there has been misconception in the West regarding the very nature of the story of Gaza Strip, the threat of Islamic Jihad and Hamas, the threat that Iran presents, the threat that the Hezbollah presents. This war, the background of this war, the terrifying pictures and horrifying pictures that we saw basically should be a very strong wake-up call for Western policymakers, for Western policy shapers and public opinion shapers to really understand the real nature of this story on the ground. In the Western public realm, in the Western media discussion, the story of the complex reality of the region, and particularly the significant threat that Hamas and Islamic Jihad and Hezbollah and Iran present to Israel and to other players in the region, that reality was mistranslated. It was misunderstood for different reasons. Instead of understanding the reality for what it is, the reality was basically twisted in the service of narratives, Western narratives, that though may sound wonderful, the only problem with that was that they did not provide the ability to read accurately the reality and to understand accurately and comprehensively the scale and the magnitude of the challenge and the threat the Iranian regime and its proxies are presenting to this region, not only to the state of Israel.
And what you're looking at right there on your screen is just some of the drone video, aerial video that is coming in out of Gaza City. Avi, thank you so much for taking the time to join us and help break this down. We really appreciate it.
Thank you, Josh, for having me.
Of course.